Hi, today I am with Frankie, Elliot, our sports reporter, and we're going to be talking about Brighton and Hove Albion in this sports special. And in the first half, we're going to be talking about their pre-season friendly against Chelsea and how some of the new players have been integrating. So, Frankie, what did you make of that friendly against Chelsea the other day?
Well, it was certainly entertaining. 7 goals, a red card, a team they have no love lost for, a team in Chelsea that they have tried to sign one of their players, Levi Colwell, who was on loan at Brighton last year, was playing for Chelsea in this friendly despite links with him moving back to the south coast. And also, of course, Moisés Caicedo, the Brighton midfielder, who has been linked with Chelsea throughout this summer. He was not involved at all. So it's a club with a lot of history, obviously Graham Potter and Marc Cucurella, Brighton's head coach and Brighton's best player, left to join Chelsea last season as well. So there's been a lot of to and fro between the two teams, and you could tell that had spoiled onto the pitch because it was a very aggressive friendly with lots going on, lots of big tackles going in for what should be a non-competitive game, but certainly signs that Brighton can still compete with the big boys going into next season because they put in a really, really good performance against a very strong Chelsea team.
And the fact that it did kind of spoil over and you could see that passion and that emotion with the players. Do you see that as quite a good thing that they're still, despite it being a friendly and despite they've got a lot of games coming up this season, they still had that fire to keep going and to, sort of prove a point to Chelsea as well, considering their history?
Absolutely. I think De Zerbi has always spoken about the fact the mentality of the squad needs to be that of an elite club, and I think playing like that in a game, in a friendly game, shows that he has installed that really well. They're not taking it as just a fitness exercise. They're not taking it as an opportunity just to stretch out their legs. They're seeing it as an opportunity to get one over a team that they feel they want to be competing with again next year. And I have to say, they were down to 10 men for most of the second half and went down to 4-1 down as well with about 15 minutes to play. And most teams in that situation, given the circumstances that it's a pre-season game, would just sort of keel over and say, okay, we'll take the beating here, we'll take the drubbing because it doesn't matter. But Brighton refused to do that, scored 2 late goals and could have easily got an equaliser as well, despite the one-man advantage for Chelsea. And yeah, that shows real character and a real great signs for what's to come this season.
And a couple of players were making their debut for Brighton. What did you make of some of their performances? De Bruyne, De Hood, Pedro. What did you think of them?
Yeah, no, there were some really strong showings. For De Hood, he started the game, and obviously that's a big role he's taking over. He's sort of coming into that as the replacement for Alexis McAllister, who was so brilliant in Brighton's midfield last year. But he looked like he slotted in really well, really obviously technically proficient, so his passing looked really good, his slick passing, picking the ball up from the back line and moving it into the forwards line with ease, passing the ball with both feet. And looked to take up some really nice positions as well and looked very controlled, keeping the tempo ticking for Brighton. So he looks like he's been a good addition. João Pedro came on in the second half and he looked excellent. He looked like a real threat to the Chelsea backline every time he picked up the ball. He's very quick, he's got very good close control dribbling, and he won the penalty with about 15 minutes to go and obviously scored that penalty as well. So he's got his first Brighton goal and then also provided a lovely assist, again taking on a number of Chelsea players on that left-hand side, and provided the assist for Dennis Undav's goal, which was the 3rd goal for Brighton. So those two looked great. Verbruggen also played 45 minutes as well. It's good to see him and see what he was about. He obviously came in and did that goalkeeping role excellently as playing with the ball at his feet as well as being the classic shot stopper. And there was also some opportunities for some younger players as well. Jack Hinzelwood, the 18-year-old youth team prospect, he played at right back and impressed a number of people. De Zerbi was impressed by his performance. Adam Lallana, the experienced midfielder in the Albion squad, he said he looked right at home against Premier League opposition. So there's some really good signs going forward for some new players coming to this Brighton squad.
And obviously going into the Europa League campaign next season, more games at hand. How important is it that these younger players do step up and, it might only be 15 minutes here and 15 minutes there, but how important is it that they take those opportunities and they fit in to fill in those gaps with, Brighton could probably do with a couple of players as well. How important is it that they fill those gaps?
Oh, it's vital. I think, if you look at any squads, even the best squads in the world, you look at Manchester City, for instance, you'll see a number of youth team prospects on the bench for Champions League games, League Cup games, FA Cup games, either starting them or coming on for the last 15, 20 minutes. And it's vital that they can rely on those players because obviously it's a cost-effective way of filling up your squad. It's also a good way of giving these young players experience. But it's also important to the team because it gives those key players a rest for them. 20 minutes doesn't seem like long, but in a highly competitive game where it's a very physically demanding game as we know at the highest level, to have those moments where you can take off your players and put on a youth team player who can not disrupt the game too much is vital. So the signs are there. There's a couple there in the Brighton squad that could do that role. Jack Hemswood, as I said, looks like one. Ed Turns looks like another. Whether they would prefer to go out on loan and play more first team football is yet to be seen. But an opportunity is definitely there for some European experience, for some domestic experience as well, and some Premier League experience, which can't be turned down, because that'd be great for those young boys.
And obviously, going back to some of the new signings, how Pedro played, Brighton's most expensive ever transfer. Do you think he's worth the money? Do you think this is the marquee signing that Brighton needed this summer? Yeah,
he looks like he could be the real deal. I think there's some question marks about spending 30 million on a player that had never really proven it at Premier League level. He had been a good player for Watford in the Championship, but to spend 30 million on someone that's not really scored many goals in the Premier League, there raises some questions. But from what we saw on Saturday and what we have seen as well with him in the Championship, he looks like he could be a real threat to many teams and bolsters that attacking line for Brighton, because at the end of last season we saw a number of those players start to just drift off because of the amount of games they were playing in such quick succession. Matoma was one of Brighton's best players at the start of last season, but he lost his form towards the last 3 months. So to have someone like Pedro that can slot in as either a striker to support Evan Ferguson or Danny Welbeck, or even to play out from the left, so to give Matoma a run for his money, is a real benefit. And like I said, it creates competition, which is always good in elite squads, but it also gives an opportunity for, if there are people that are out of form or need a rest, he can come in and make the difference as well. So I really hope he can be a star player for Brighton going into next season.
Thanks, Frankie. That's everything from us in part 1. Make sure you tune into part 2, as we'll be talking about some of the players who might be coming in and going out of Brighton this summer. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of latest TV news. I've got Frankie, Elliot with me here, and we're going to be talking about some of the players who might be coming in and going out of Brighton and Hove Albion this summer. So, Frankie, the name that everyone's talking about across the footballing world right now is Moisés Caicedo. What's happening there?
So, from what we can understand, Chelsea are the only real contenders to sign Moisés Caicedo, who does want to leave Brighton. They've had 2 bids so far, Brighton from Chelsea for Caicedo, the latest one being around £70 million. The first one, I believe, was about 60 odd million pounds. This is nowhere near Brighton's valuation of Caicedo, so they were both rejected. Brighton see Caicedo to be worth around 100 million. This is because of the recent sale of Declan Rice, the West Ham captain, for around 106 million pounds to Arsenal. Brighton believe Caicedo is as good, if not better, than Declan Rice, pointing to the fact that he's also a number of years younger than the England international. So they believe around £100 million for Caicedo is what they deserve. So talks are still ongoing between Chelsea and Brighton. I don't think many people expect it to be £100 million for the eventual transfer, because Caicedo his camp is wanting this deal to be completed quickly. Obviously, pre-season has already started and they want him to be working with the new Chelsea boss, Mauricio Pochettino, as quickly as possible. So a deal we believe is going to be completed this week. I'd imagine it'd be around sort of 85 to 95 million pounds, so not far away from the 100 million pound valuation they have of Caicedo, and certainly a big profit from the 4 million pounds they spent on to bring him in 2021. But yeah, it has taken longer than Caicedo would have wanted, and probably Brighton and Chelsea would have wanted as well. But this is due to the difference in opinions on how much Caicedo is worth. But we are close to reaching a deal, we believe.
And obviously Brighton have already made a few signings, but if they get in this 80 to 100 million pounds, it opens a lot of doors for them financially. What positions do you think they should enhance with that money, and what players specifically do you think they could come in to not only replace Caicedo but improve the team with that extra money?
Yeah, so Brighton have never been one to be gun-ho with any money they've accumulated from transfers. Obviously, we've seen a number of players leave for big money moves in recent years. And that's just been spread around the squad well by getting players that are still of that sort of bracket of emerging talents, but snapping them up for cheap prices, but in a number of different positions. I imagine Brighton will continue to do that. However, Roberto De Zerbi, the Brighton manager, said on Saturday following their pre-season game with Chelsea, he was obviously asked a lot about Caicedo, and he was very adamant they need to find someone of Caicedo's quality to replace him if he is sold because of their quest in the Europa League this year. Whether they are willing to spend that amount of money, so we would imagine someone of Caicedo's quality, we are saying someone that is in the 40 to 50 million pound region, that would break Brighton's transfer record fee. So whether they jump the gun so quickly and spend the money straight away is yet to be seen. I'm sure that's what De Zerbi would want. I don't think the board would be willing to do that. They already have a number of midfield options this season due to Steven Alzate returning from loan, James Milner being signed, and Mahoud Dahoud also being signed as well. So they've actually got a number of midfielders already at the club, but not probably to the same level as Caicedo. So there's a bit of discrepancy about what the manager wants, maybe what the club wants. So it'll be interesting to see how the money is used.
And obviously, Moisés Caicedo plays a really, really unique role in that holding midfielder where, he's quite active, he can move around quite easily. And, for example, you've compared him to the Declan Rice transfer, and Declan Rice is a player who plays a similar position but plays a very, very different role. How difficult do you think it's going to be to replace a player like Caicedo?
Very, very difficult. I mean, when they say they want to find someone of Caicedo's quality, I don't think they'll be able to do that. He's sort of a once in a blue moon player, just for the fact that he is so good at the defensive side of the game. They very much the N'Golo Kante stuff of breaking up play. His tackling is immaculate, and his reading of the game is brilliant. So to have all those qualities, plus the fact he's very good on the ball, his energy levels and athleticism is excellent. He's basically the all-round midfielder, a ball-winning midfielder, but also a box-to-box and a bit of a playmaker as well. So he's got all those qualities which are very, very difficult to find, and hence why they value him so highly at the club, and also why teams like Chelsea are wanting to sign him. So the next player that comes in for the money that they get from Caicedo has got big shoes to fill, and is very, very unlikely to fill them. So it's not a case of signing someone like Caicedo, because I don't think that's possible, but maybe a player who has got one of those qualities but excels at it, and maybe with a bit more experience than Caicedo, who's only 21, may be the best way to go about it, because it's very difficult to find someone like that again in Brighton's price range anyway.
And we've just spoken about Brighton not wanting to rush. They don't want to pull that trigger before they're absolutely certain that they want that player on their team. But I guess you've got the issue of West Ham also looking for a player in the same position. West Ham also competing in the Europa League next season. Do you think that might spur Brighton on to maybe move quicker than they would have done if they did have a bit more time and not that competition?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if you look at all the stories at the moment, the two, when you see a centre mid who is linked with a move away, someone like Scott McTominay at Manchester United or Conor Gallagher at Chelsea, the two first clubs you see are West Ham and Brighton, because they're both looking to replace their talismanic midfielders. You would imagine that Brighton have a different policy to West Ham. So that would maybe they wouldn't be sort of led into a sort of competition just because they see West Ham are more active in looking to sign someone in this transfer window. But they may have an eye on what West Ham are doing, because at the end of the day, if there's a player that they need and they see that West Ham are also in the same position, they may want to act quicker, they want to be smarter, and they also want to keep their head coach happy, because De Zerbi is looking to take Brighton into that next level of not just being a small club that is competing above its weight. He wants to take them into being a club that regularly competes at that level. So to sign players like Conor Gallagher, like Scott McTominay, who have had big club experience and have had international experience as well, that is a sort of landmark signing that he's looking to make, hence why they've been linked so heavily with Levi Colwill, one of the most exciting centre-back talents in European football, who's currently playing at Chelsea. So it's an interesting development to see whether Brighton are willing to take the plunge, so to speak, because West Ham, I'm sure, will. They are very much happy to spend that sort of money quite quickly.
And I guess also with Brighton, with the way things are going at the moment, obviously things are looking good. You've got European football. And like you said, De Zerbi wants to establish them as a top club in England. So does the board as well. Do you think they'll rush to try and do that? Because I guess there's the fear that, you might spend big money, it doesn't pay off. Or will you try and find another Caicedo from maybe South America or Eastern Europe, where you spend $4 million and it's going to take 3 or 4 years to actually come to fruition? Do you think that's something they might lean towards and not rush for that European spot? Or will they just want to quickly get in a big player so they can establish themselves as soon as possible as a big team?
It's hard to call in the centre mid role because their first priority at the moment is signing a left-sided centre back. This is the Igor we've heard from Fiorentina. That deal is going to be completed sometime this week, a £15 million deal for a left-footed centre back who's had European experience. That's going to be the first deal through the door. Their next one, according to what we've heard, is a winger. They want to get a winger either right or left side to add more depth in the attack. The Cole Palmer from Manchester City is the player that's most closely linked with a deal for that, although we're not sure whether that can be a loan move or a transfer. So in regards to how they want to play the centre midfield situation, it's too early to say. I think we'll understand a lot more once the Caicedo deal is done. And then they will probably see how the first couple of games go in the season before making their next move, because if Billy Gilmour or Steven Alzate step up to the role, or Mahoud Dahoud, and they see that they are more than competent at keeping Brighton at the high levels they have been for the last 2 seasons, then they won't need to dip into the market. If Luton Town pull them apart and they seem to be shipping goals because they can't control the game, then the panic button might be reached a little bit quicker. So it's all there's a lot of moving parts at the moment at Brighton in regards to how they tackle the next couple of weeks. They've got 2 things they want to sort out: a defender and a winger. They've got that defender now. The winger, I'm sure they'll go for next, and then the centre midfield thing will look after itself once a couple of factors are sorted out, such as whether the current squad is good enough and how they're competing when they're back in the Premier League.
And obviously you touched on Igor, who might be joining the club, in the next couple of weeks. What can Brighton fans expect from him if he does sign?
They've got a very, very athletic defender who is very comfortable on the ball. If anyone watched Serie A or even the Conference League last year, they would have seen him driving into midfield with ease and confidence. He's very quick. Centre back who likes to be on the ball and likes to drive and take it into attacking areas. So they've got someone that suits that De Zerbi style of play of being intricate short passes and everyone being comfortable on the ball and having the ball in tight areas. He will definitely suit that. He's also a very tall centre back who would like to be involved in set pieces and does grab a number of goals each season from those situations. So he seems to be slotting in perfectly. He could be the perfect partner to Lewis Dunk. Obviously Dunk is getting older and his speed is not what it once was, but both very tall centre backs which suit the Premier League style of play, but also suit De Zerbi style of play, because they'll both be ball-playing centre-backs, which is what he has desired since he came to the club.
And do you think Igor will be a player who will start for Brighton week in or week out, or do you think Webster might give him a bit of a run for his money there?
Well, you can never say. Obviously, someone like Webster has been great for the club, especially for the last 2-3 years. But because Igor is a naturally left-footed player, that just gives the team a bit more balance. And that's what Levi Colwill offered so well last year, because he was also left-footed. So I think that stands Igor in good stead to be the regular starter for Brighton going forward from next season.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Frankie. And thank you for tuning in to Latest TV News. We've got more stories on our website, so if you'd like to view those, please visit the SussexWorld on our website.